com. Normally we do our Twitch stream on Wednesdays and Fridays at 6, but we got a lot going on, and our friend George Chidi is in downtown Atlanta. George, what the heck is going on down there?
So I am at the Wendy's
Okay, where
at
Rashad, the gentleman's name is Rashad Jackson?
Brooks,
Brooks.
Rashard Brooks.
Rashard Brooks.
Rashard
I'm so
Brooks,
sorry.
whose name I've heard chanted over and over and over again today. Rashard Brooks was killed here,
Okay.
right here.
What
Night.
happened? Do we know what happened?
We have a general sense of it, in part because there was video, because these days there's always video.
Right.
So Rashard Brooks was going through the drive-thru, and when he was passed out in his car.
Okay.
And somebody called the cops. Cops showed up. They talked to him for about 20 minutes. He failed the field sobriety test. They decided to arrest him. He resisted arrest in the sense that he struggled with the two officers.
Okay.
Got a taser away from one of them, and then started running. And he started running here. He started running behind me.
Okay.
And cops chased him for about 2 seconds, and then one pulled his sidearm and shot him 3 times in the back.
Yeah, I think I saw the video. I think the video kind of cuts out in the actual shooting part.
The person who was, there were 2 people who shot video.
Okay.
And the 2 people who shot video couldn't turn around in their cars far enough to catch the actual moment of the shooting, which honestly might be for the best. To catch the there's going to be video plenty enough, soon enough, when the body camera video is released, which should be soon.
So, if we're bringing up readers, there was a shooting in Atlanta last night, and now apparently the police chief has resigned as well. What was the reaction to that when that happened?
So there was sort of a general mulling about of, okay, now what?
Right.
Like literally, like there was, all right, the police chief has resigned. Now what? Let me just tell you, like I know the police chief. Like I email the police chief. She emails me back.
Mm-hmm.
We talk regularly. I have worked with her relatively closely for the last 5 years of my life. I believe in the police chief. I believe in Erica Shields.
So this was a shot. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, somebody was smoking.
No worries.
Yeah, it's a shock, and it's more than just a shock. People are saying, "Oh, she was a racist police chief because how could you allow these things to happen?" Yada yada yada. No, that's not it. Like the problem here, like Erica Shields was a relatively progressive police chief, relative in terms of comparing to other police chiefs around the country, and to police chiefs who have served in that role here. If she's quitting, to some degree, that means she's giving up on reform.
Right.
And the folks who
using IQOS is as simple as pushing a button. The light
tend to be 20 and 30-year white guys who are coming from zone commands and SWAT details and other sort of not particularly progressive policing traditions. Until we get this nailed down, you're going to have an interim police chief who doesn't have a lot of authority to make real changes at a time when real changes are absolutely necessary. Like, what it means with the chief gone is that, like, there's no political buffer now between what happens in this street and the mayor and the city council. Like, everything that's happening right now is on Keisha Bottoms. Keisha Lance Bottoms ought to be, well, she ought to be right here.
Why isn't she there?
Honestly, I don't know why she's not here. She should be here. Like, this is her, I am reasonably certain this is her old council district. Like, these aren't people that are some mystery. Like, she knows half the people who are in these streets right now. Like, these aren't This isn't this isn't an abstraction. Like this is her neighborhood. She
Right.
lives here. Um, and so yeah, okay, you get rid of the police chief. What about the zone commander who was responsible for the training and operations that
Right.
mistrained this officer to draw his weapon?
Now,
What
did
about the tactical officer? What about his first line supervisor? Like, do these people still have jobs? Do we even know who they are? Um, Never mind how we're going to replace a police chief. That's like, I'm sort of getting into the weeds there because, like, at some point we need to be in the weeds. How do we keep a black man from getting 3 bullets in the back of his back? Like, that's the thing that we should be focusing on. Like, how do we keep cops from shooting people? Like, think about this. Like, because it's been killing me the whole time I've been thinking about this. Is we've been in the street for 3 weeks. First
right.
about Ahmaud Arbery, and then um, about Minneapolis, and like every police officer in this city has almost certainly stood on a riot line and been screamed at about like the need for these shootings to stop.
Right.
How do you live through that as a police officer and then go, I'm going to shoot this guy in the back? Like, what kind of disconnect is necessary in your soul, never mind your professional competence, that you think under these circumstances you should be clearing your holster for anything other than somebody shooting at you? I
Well,
just don't get it.
yeah, I think a lot of us are baffled. I mean, it feels like, Atlanta is a grenade and somebody just pulled the pin, and
So there are people in this crowd who are trying very much to put the pin back.
right.
And there was a dispute earlier, and I got it on tape. Like, folks from the NAACP, hell, Richard Rose, the national director of the NAACP, is here
Wow.
along with his team. Um, I talked to him earlier today. Like, there are people here who are trying to put the pin back. And every time they start in, like, there are a group of very pissed off local people who are like, don't tell us how to get angry. Don't tell us not to get arrested. Don't tell us anything because you've been trying to work on this piecemeal for years, if not decades,
Right.
and we're still staring at a man with 3 bullets in his back.
What do we know what time that this happened, that this incident took place?
I don't know offhand.
Okay.
I think it was. I think I read it was 11:30, but so there is reporting on this.
Okay.
Like all the news stations, everybody else has got something. I think it is important to note that the initial report that the broadcast media has been putting out, none of them have said a word about bystander video, at least as of this morning,
Huh.
and none of them had said that he'd been shot in the back, even though it's perfectly obvious from the video that he got shot in the back.
Yeah. I wonder
Like,
why.
because they're cowards, like, and they're unwilling to. They want the police or some sort of public authority to confirm information that is right in front of your face. As soon as you look at the video, he's face down. Like, to suggest
Right.
that he was shot while he was facing the officers is to say that he was running away, turned around, got shot, and then turned around again and fell face forward. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, there's actually some video I'm looking at right now that somebody posted. It looks like surveillance footage.
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'll drop a link here to you. We can look when we're done. Is it your opinion that things had generally started to calm down a little bit before this happened? That things were kind of starting to cool off a bit?
I think that's fair.
Okay.
I think it had. I think it had started to calm down.
I,
Um, and in part because the curfew had been called off, the National Guard had gone home, the city's
right.
street corners didn't look like occupied France anymore. People were having marches and rallies, marching up and down through, Woodruff Park and Centennial Park and at, you know, Midtown and everywhere else. Like, I mean, it's not. like, yeah, things had been calming down. Like there wasn't the threat of some sort of act of general public violence had gone away. Um, and I'd like to say that think that we're still there, but you've got Rashard Brooks with 3 bullets in his back.
Right.
After all of this, like, I mean, there's the question. Like, okay, we had calmed down. Like, we had stopped breaking curfew. We stopped throwing things at the cops. We stopped breaking windows up and down the Peachtree Street downtown. We were doing it in all of the ways that you're supposed to do it, seeking proper political reform through peaceful protest. And then Rashard Brooks takes 3 bullets in his back.
What was your reaction when you heard the news, George?
Like, how could this possibly happen? Like, after all of this, how the hell could any cop think that shooting somebody wasn't going to have some sort of tremendous consequences? Like, shooting somebody running away. It's not like people don't run away from the cops all the time. There isn't a police officer in Atlanta who hasn't had someone run away from them at some point. Like, it happens all the time. Like, you're trained for that. They had his car. They had his driver's license. His wife was there. He's a 240-pound black man, like, he's not getting far. Like, the cops were probably 30 seconds away. They could have arrested him at home. There isn't a good reason in the world. So that police, like, I've found some things that may not have been reported broadly in the media so far by talking to the police officers here.
What can you share with us that hasn't been widely reported that you've been able to glean while you've been down there, George?
So let's start with the basics. The police officer who shot Rashard Brooks has been fired.
Okay.
If that's been reported, I haven't seen it, but he has been fired.
Okay.
The other thing that I think is more interesting, frankly, is that the police officer who killed Rashard Brooks is from Zone 2.
Okay, and Zone 2 covers what?
Zone 2 is southwest Atlanta. We're in southeast Atlanta.
Okay.
We're in Zone 3 right now.
Okay.
Which is to say the police officer who killed Rashard Brooks normally wouldn't even be here. This isn't his zone, his territory. For some reason, that guy was responding to a call here. Now, maybe that's a function of short staffing, because the police are short-staffed, or so they say. But maybe he was freelancing one, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Maybe he just, maybe he just happened to be there driving home or something. You're like, I'll pick one up. What the hell? Why not? I don't know. Like, the short answer is I don't know.
Why was he in a different zone? Why was he not in his regular zone?
And we're marching away from the Wendy's right now and back up the street.
Sure.
The reason that the zone assignment for that police officer is important is because we have to ask some really serious questions beyond just, oh, well, we got rid of the police chief. Who trained this man? Like, which major in charge of a zone also should probably be fired, if not resign?
Right.
Which assistant zone commander, which captain should be on the chopping block and fired? Which tactical officer, which lieutenant who is, like, responsible for his shift, who's also responsible for his training and operational deployment, should be fired? Like, who's his squad commander? Because his squad leader should be fired. Like, if there aren't actual consequences up and down the chain, when there's a misuse of force, you don't create institutional change and a change in culture that prevents these things in the first place.
Yeah, that was
going on and on.
No, that was actually, I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask kind of a general, what sounds like a stupid question, which is, why is it important that there are consequences for people who supervise these officers when things like this happen.
Because, like, if so, the big question here, like the big the $64,000 question is, how do you identify bad cops and keep them out of a place where they can go shoot people? Like where, quote, are the good cops to stop the bad cops? And right now, there's no institutional pressure to identify bad cops and then have them fired. But if the guy who's responsible for hiring and firing a police officer in a department appraises a risk and says, yeah, this guy, yeah, he's going to kill somebody at some point and it's going to be a bad shoot. Like, I need this guy off the street. Like that risk has to be real. And right now it's not. Like, the fact of the matter is, nobody in this crowd knows the name of the zone commander of this zone. Like, I could ask a dozen people, I'm not going to get an answer. Like, so we don't know who to hold responsible. In fact, hang on a second. Let me just ask. 1 second.
Sure.
Quick question. Who's the commander for Zone 2? I know, but the guy last night who shot the guy was a Zone 2 officer. Funny, because the Zone 3 commander just said that to me. You said he was a Zone 3 officer. Love you too. So
what'd you find out?
Nothing.
Nothing.
He says that the guy wasn't a Zone 2 officer, even though the Zone 3 commander, like not the zone commander, but the assistant zone commander, told to me like an hour ago that the shooter was from Zone 2, which means they're already starting to try to diffuse responsibility.
So
I should note, by the way, hang on, before I say anything else. So Kim Jackson, who is a candidate for the state senate, and is probably won her state senate race, is right here.
Oh, there is an elected
He's
official
in the White
there.
House. There's some sort of argument going on, and I want to see if I can capture it.
Okay. Be safe.
Oh, it's an argument between protesters and the police.
Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot!
Yeah, I know.
Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot!
It's too many people for me to be standing there without my mask up.
Sure. I understand.
Yep.
We appreciate you taking this time to join us, and I know our Twitch viewers appreciate it. If you're just joining us, this is Dan Wisenhunt, editor and publisher of Decatorish.com. This is not the Decatorish Twitch show. We normally do that on Wednesdays and Fridays, but things are going sidewise in Atlanta. There was a shooting of a man by the name of Rashard Brooks. He was shot by some Atlanta police officers last night while he was at a Wendy's. He apparently was under suspicion of driving under the influence. There was a struggle of some sort. He ran away, and the officers shot him in the back, and he died. And so there's been all kinds of cascading consequences. Obviously, there are people out on the street where George is right now. The police chief has resigned. And what seemed to be a moment where we were coming to a consensus about how to move forward, it just seems like we've lost some momentum. And it almost feels like, to me, we sort of pressed the reset button a little bit. I don't know if that's an incorrect feeling or not, but that's kind of how I feel just observing it.
I think that's fair. By the way, I may be in and out here.
Okay.
And I apologize for that.
No, it's okay.
Are you getting me right now?
I'm getting you, but your screen's frozen. There, it's
all
moving
right,
now.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a moment.
Yeah.
And this is, I can't help but notice that the number of police officers who have gathered closely around us has increased
Huh.
in the last 15 minutes. And I strongly suspect, by the way, what time is it? 7:44?
Yeah, it's about 7:45.
I strongly suspect that there is going to be an order of dispersal of some sort, probably within another half an hour. Like I wouldn't be surprised. Uh,
There's no curfew in Atlanta right now.
no, there isn't, and that's the thing. There is no curfew in Atlanta.
Right.
If they decide that they're going to establish a curfew, I can't help but think it's going to be one of these 10 minutes warning and oh yeah, we now have a curfew in Atlanta again. We'll see.
So
All I got to tell you is like that's a much bigger crowd now than it was before.
yeah.
It's
Yeah, I know a lot of people. What I wanted to ask you, George, is the people that you're interacting with and seeing right now, are they the same people you've been seeing at these other protests, or are these different groups of people that have moved in?
a handful of people. There are people I've seen. There are people I've seen before.
Okay.
Like, but it's not most people. It's most people. Most people are. I don't recognize them or I haven't seen them before. Like some we know. Hey, say hi to Dan at the caterers.
Hey.
Hey.
Caterers, hey. What's up? It's pretty energetic. It's kind of nice to be down here.
Stay
You know what I mean?
safe.
Like, he lives in Pine Lake.
Okay, he's a neighbor. Okay.
Yeah, he's a neighbor. Like, I recognize a few people here, but by and large, like, yeah, I know maybe 20 people in this crowd,
Okay.
but I don't know 200. And like, I joke and I say I know everybody who does this stuff. Like, that's a lie. I don't know most people who do this stuff. It's a smattering of the people who you expect to see at a protest because they lead organizations that are, attempting progressive change. But honest to God, a whole lot of folks here are just people who are pissed off.
Yeah.
A lot of white people. A lot of white people. A lot of white people in Southeast Atlanta, which is fun to see, frankly. I used to work more or less up the street. We're probably less than a mile from the West End, and that's where that's where my old office was. So I have eaten at this Wendy's. I mean, this isn't that guy looks like me. Rashard Brooks looks like me. He's somewhat overweight African American in his 40s, or at least that's what he looked like. He might be 27. I saw something like that. I don't know how it is, but I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm unlikely to pass out in the middle of a drive-through, but everybody's unlikely to pass out in the middle of a drive-through.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it isn't clear to me that he was drunk. I mean, he might have just had a diabetic fucking crash.
Sure.
Like, I mean, it might have been that simple. Big questions to answer about police training and use of force and like the standards for how to respond to what may be a mental health or a drug issue. Like big questions. Like, but at the end of the day, like, why the fuck are we answering them now? I'm sorry. It's just, we've been here before. Like, since 2013, there have been now 16 police killings in the city of Atlanta. Average is about one every 6 months. Once every 6 months, a black man, and 14 of those 16 were black men in a city that is 50% white. 14 out of 16 were black men. One was a black woman. Like, every time there's a shooting like this, we have, hold that thought. Take a look at this. Like, all right, so every 6 months we hold hands and sing kumbaya and like have very, very serious conversations about whether or not the police are showing appropriate restraint and whether or not we're doing the things that we're supposed to do to protect and preserve Black lives. Like, we have these oh so serious conversations with the mayor and the city council, and then we don't do anything. We don't change anything. We don't change deployment. We don't change recruiting. We don't change use of force standards. We don't change discipline. We don't, nothing. It's all the same. And 6 months later, somebody else gets shot and killed. Like, like the one thing we can say about the Minneapolis murder is that like that probably was the straw that broke the back. Like, there isn't going to be, nobody's going to accept half measures at this point. Like, and sure as hell, not in Atlanta, where 10 of the 15 people on the city council are Black and they haven't had a white mayor in 30 years. Like, nobody here is going to say, yeah, all right, well, we trust you. Like, yeah, Keisha Bottoms, we trust you. We know you're one of us and you're going to do the right thing. And I'm sure you'll make a reform or make the right hire of a new police chief and everything's going to be fine. Nobody here believes that.
Do you have time to take a couple of Twitch questions, George?
Sure.
So the first question from Vesmuth is, have the police issued any statements today?
Not a clue, because I got out here around 3 o'clock.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything before that.
Another question, if they terminate the officers, I wonder if their contracts provide a way for them to get back in. Are there ways for them to get their job back if they're fired? One has been fired.
All right, so one has been fired. I don't know if both have been fired.
Okay.
One has been fired. The question is whether or not they're somehow hireable somewhere else or hireable back here. So Georgia does not have strong union protections. So if they get fired here, they're fired, and the likelihood of them ever being reinstated here is very, very low. That doesn't mean that this guy couldn't be rehired somewhere else. It's entirely possible. It's part of the reason why it's important to charge this person with a felony, even if it's like felony jaywalking, if such a thing exists.
Right.
Because once you've been convicted of a felony, you aren't eligible to be a police officer pretty much everywhere in the United States.
Another question. It was, give me 1 second. It was reported earlier that Rayshard was in the passenger seat. Have you heard that?
I honestly don't know. I haven't heard that.
Okay.
And I think it's important. Like, we're going to have plenty of video. We're going to have plenty of video to sort of substantiate the rumors of what this, that, or the other thing later. Like,
okay.
The important thing is we have enough video to conclude that this was an unnecessary shooting, assuming ever that there is ever such a thing. This one certainly wasn't one of them.
Do you think we're going to have curfews again, Trey Bliss asks?
Depends entirely on whether or not the guys in black pullovers decide to start smashing up the building in an hour when it gets dark.
Okay.
I honestly don't know.
Another question, and if this is a details question, feel free to ignore it, but did this person actually get the stun gun from the police officer? It says the video looks like he turned around and pointed something at the police officer.
No,
do you know that?
So I've seen the video. I've seen both videos.
Okay.
If there's a third video that's surveillance camera video, I haven't seen that one. From the first two videos I saw, like, there isn't enough video evidence to show what he was doing at the moment that he was shot. Like, he may have had a stun gun in his hand, but there's no evidence that he had turned around and fired it. And even if he did, that is not justification to shoot somebody. It's just not. Like, at the distance we were looking at, he wasn't going to be able to hit that cop anyway. even if he did fire it. It's nonsense. Um, and I've got to say, I am expecting the whole, like, if people haven't already started pulling his criminal record, it's a matter of time. How's it going? I'm with Decatur. I'm on Twitch with Decatur's right now.
Hey, Claire Check Snyder here from Decatur.
There you go. Claire Schneider.
Hey, Claire, it's good to see you.
Like, hey, follower. Follow us on Twitch.
Yeah, Claire does a lot of work in Decatur as well. We've worked with her in the past.
So some familiar faces.
Yeah, I know Claire. Question for you, George. Do you think that the police chief should have resigned?
No.
Why not?
Here's the thing. Like, I don't know if she should have resigned. I can understand her feeling pressured to do so. So, again, Erica Shields is actually one of the most progressive police chiefs in the United States. Like, if you are going to try to implement an actual series of policing reforms, one, it's got to start with the political will to do so, but you also need somebody in charge with enough institutional authority to put them through. If she's resigning, it says that she doesn't believe that she had enough authority in order to make the changes necessary to prevent things like this from happening, and that she didn't want to be responsible for what happened because she couldn't make those changes. Like, and that's frightening. It's not that I don't think that she should have resigned, because it's not my place to say one way or another whether or not somebody wants to keep a job that they don't think they can do. The bigger, broader, more difficult question is this a job anybody can do? Like, what impossible thing are we about to ask a new police chief to do? It's the same question I'm asking when we talk about hiring a new schools chief for DeKalb. Like, the more you undermine that authority, the more difficult actual reforms are going to be to make, because whoever's making them is going to feel like they're on the bubble, and that any misstep they make that's their job. Maybe that's the kind of responsibility that we actually want out of somebody who's got command of 1,000 people with guns. Maybe that's exactly how it should work. We haven't actually had that conversation yet. Like, there's so much that needs to change right now, and we're not actually talking about what needs to change because we keep counting the dead bodies. All right, sorry.
No, that's okay. I understand. I appreciate you taking a minute to show us what's going on. What do you think are the odds that these officers are going to face criminal charges anytime soon?
After seeing that video, 2 and 3.
Okay. How soon do you think we could see something?
Within a week.
Okay.
Because Paul Howard looks like he's in a runoff.
That's right. That's what I was going to ask.
Paul Howard managed to at least get in a runoff. I honestly was wondering whether or not he was going to be third on that ballot. Paul Howard is going to want to send a message to the people that are standing in this street. And I bet he's going to charge them. I bet he's going to charge them with manslaughter. Like, if not, not manslaughter. We don't have a manslaughter charge, but like a second-degree murder charge. Like, I bet. And when he does, he will be denounced for having done so quickly, as doing so in an act of naked politics. And it, in fact, will be an act of naked politics.
Right.
It also might incidentally be the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of hard to separate the two at this point, because we're right in addition to being in the middle of a pandemic, we're also in the middle of an election season.
Yep.
So everything's kind of coming together. If you're just joining us, this is Dan Wisenhunt, editor and publisher of Decatorish.com. We do have a Twitch show that streams on Wednesdays and Fridays at 6. George Chidi is always a guest on that show, but given what happened to Rashard Brooks in Atlanta, there's been some eruption on the streets in Atlanta. George Chidi is down there for us. He would have been down there anyway, but he's taken a moment to share what's going on with us. And if you have any questions, we're gonna probably wrap it up in another 15 minutes. But if you have any questions you want to get to George, let us know. George, where do you think? I know you've got a show coming out on tomorrow morning on Fox 5 that's talking about what comes next, and
I'm sorry I missed that. Ask me again.
That's okay. You've got a show coming out on the local Fox affiliate tomorrow, and the topic is where do we go from here? And it feels like if you ever got close to answering that question, it feels like everything's been turned over, you know?
Yeah, it feels like it's more than just starting from scratch. It's like we're starting in a hole now. Like, I honestly had this vision, both for the show and for like Metro Atlanta. I'm going to sit down for a second.
Sure. Yeah, take a break.
I had this vision of Atlanta as being as a progressive beacon, for lack of a better word, of being the way forward. Like, this is like, of all the places in America, if there was a city that could get it right, I would have figured it would have been Atlanta, because we have this tremendous tradition of protest and political activism in the Black community around these issues. And we'd had a relatively progressive police chief, and we'd been making some reforms like the pre-arrest diversion program, like ending cash bail. We are in an active conversation about closing the city jail. We raised $50 million in order to get at homelessness services and additional homelessness resources. We had done all of these things, and now it feels like we're starting over.
Yeah.
And it's become really evident that it's not enough, that it's not even close to enough, that it's not even close to enough. And, there have been people who've been saying really radical things all this time, like get rid of the police, shift the entire budget, or at least most of it, into mental health services. Hell, I have said things that were similar to that myself. That there shouldn't be a good reason for a cop to be armed, period. Like, that there really aren't a whole lot of, like, the circumstances under which somebody is walking around with a gun, getting ready to shoot somebody, and the number of police officers who are actually killed is so low, frankly, that you have to compare the 50 or so police officers who are killed every year in the United States against the 1,100 civilians that they kill over the same period of time. Policing is not 20 times more dangerous than confronting a police officer, or it shouldn't be. It doesn't make any sense, like the way we do policing. But we've been unwilling to take the political steps to make the changes, because for all of the people that you see out in the street here, there are at least as many people who are sitting in a homeowners association somewhere who are complaining about those people in their neighborhood, and maybe somebody who was going through their car, or maybe somebody who was, they hear about a robbery at a liquor store, and I happen to be in front of a liquor store right now. So they hear about a robbery at a liquor store, and then they say, well, by God, like, where are the cops? And why aren't they shooting these robbers? Like, what are we doing? Like, we need more cops. And we should give them all the equipment that they need in order to prevent these terrible things that we see on television every night. And then that turns into what we do while ignoring this. We ignore this because it's easier to ignore this because the people in this crowd are poor and they don't always vote. They don't own anything. And the people who want cops always vote and they own everything. And there might actually be more of them.
It's definitely I can only imagine how painful it is for our black readers and viewers who have to put up with this bullshit every day. But it has really made me think long and hard about the things that Decatorish does as a news organization, particularly with regard to crime coverage. I'll tell you, I have several police press releases and briefs that are sitting in my inbox, and I haven't touched them. I don't know what to do with those anymore because I feel like if we're being an arm of the police, then aren't we just perpetuating the problem? And that's why I'm trying to get a group together to kind of look at these things for me because I want, on the one hand, if there's a dangerous situation, if there's somebody running around shooting people at random or somebody running around abducting children, obviously that's an imminent public safety threat, and that needs to be communicated to people. But some of this stuff is, it's hard for me to judge whether it's an imminent public safety threat or not. The police say it is, but I have a hard time trusting the police right now and what they say. I really do, as a journalist. And maybe it should have always been that way, but it's really hard for me right now.
Hey, I'm right there with you. I left the Atlanta Journal-Constitution 12 years ago, in part because I was tired of chasing dead bodies. My job for the last year I was at the AJC was to be the person who knocked on somebody's door after there was a shooting and talk to his mother or his wife and to ask them basically how they felt. And it sucked. But every time I wrote a story like that, it would get read.
Sure.
It would get read more than any sort of, like, I could show up to a city council meeting or a county commission meeting, write about zoning issues that are nearly as important as this stuff. Like in terms of changing the trajectory of people's financial condition of their lives. Hold that thought.
New police officers. 220 new police officers with your tax dollars. Are you mad? Yeah. Are you mad? Yeah. Are you mad? No. Are you angry? No. Show up to City Hall on Monday. On Monday. They are trying to hire 221 new police officers. These can be at City Hall on Monday. Say absolutely not.
Did you get that?
Yeah, they're asking people to show up to city council on Monday.
That man was running against, I want to say, Sharon Teasley Beeg for a state senate seat right here.
Okay.
And he lost. He ran a great race, but he lost. And I cannot help but notice that he is here and she is not.
Are you seeing more elected officials and politicians in the street now than you were a few days ago?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Like, I've seen two people who were candidates, one of whom is likely elected. But no, I'm not seeing political people. And I think it's because they're afraid of showing up in a place where they can't control the message. I mean, it's that simple. They're going to get some people in their face who are going to say some things. We're going to make some demands that they're not going to be willing to to stand by. Like they're gonna say, I want you to fire X number of police officers. Well, I'm not gonna do that. And
So
then it turns into an argument that they can't control.
So if you're
So they
joining
don't
us,
go.
this is Dan Wisenhunt, editor and publisher of Decatorish.com, with our columnist George Chidi. We do have a Decatorish Twitch show. It broadcasts at 6 p.m. on Wednesdays and Fridays. This is a special edition because George is in downtown Atlanta. People are upset over the death of Rashard Brooks. I want to apologize for mispronouncing his name earlier. It's a breaking news situation, and I'm learning about it just like everyone else is, and I do apologize. I know it's important to get that stuff right. And what does that sign say, George?
It says racism is the longest running pandemic.
Yeah.
And it has the names of people killed by police officers. Philando Castile, no, it's just last names. DeBose, Johnson, Robinson, Gene, Nelson, Harris, Wilson, Bell, Sterling, Brown, Taylor, Garner, Crawford, McKenna, Glenn, Ashford, Stinney, Clark, Childress, Tillman. Yep.
Did you see the baby names? The baby names website?
I did not.
Yeah, there was a baby names website, and they changed the homepage to be the name of all black men and women killed by police.
God, serious.
Yeah, it took the breath out of you, to say the least. Very sobering thing to see. What are your plans? We got about 15 minutes left, everyone. We've gotten some donations on this stream. Just to let you know what we're doing with the donations. So all the donations are going to pay for this Twitch show. I have a website, Decatorish.com. I'm able, thankfully, to live off the proceeds from that website. So this is really going to help people like George and Hans and the other people who help us put on this Twitch show every week. So if you're wondering where that's going, that's our plan right now. We appreciate the support. We're gonna conclude in about 13 minutes, I think. George, what are your plans for the rest of the evening? Are you going to stay there all night? Are you going to leave in a little while?
So I don't. I'm going to see how things I'm going to see how things pan out at dusk, because I imagine that's when police are going to start dispersing folks.
Okay.
Anything that is donated today, I am going to donate right back to the pre-arrest diversion initiative in Atlanta. I don't need to make money off of this. I'm good.
Okay.
But if you don't,
we'll make
if you
sure
put
that's
money
where it
in
goes.
here, I'm going to put it into something I think helps solve the problem.
All right. We'll make sure it gets there. Well, if anybody has any questions for George Chidi, now is the time. We're gonna wrap it up in about 10 more minutes. But he's out there. He's talking to people. We've seen some Decatur people out and about protesting today. Anybody who's out protesting today, be safe, be careful, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, take care of George. We couldn't do this without George.
All right. So I'm not sure what's happening now. Like things are starting to slow down just a hair.
Okay.
And they're slowing down in part. I think people are starting to. I think this is physical exhaustion, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
There are people. I got here at 3. People have been here for hours. So, like, people started to show up last night. Like, there has been a continual presence here. There's been a continual presence here since the shooting last night. It's a remarkable thing. Like, I'm still wrapping my head around this. It's one thing to have thousands of people in the street after a shooting. And that doesn't happen all the time. It didn't happen, for example, when the young woman was shot and killed in the back of a police car 5 years or so ago. I think her name was McKinney, but I've got to look it up, and I apologize.
Okay.
A few years ago, police were arresting a woman downtown. like
I
right
remember the
across the
story.
street. Yeah, and somehow they failed to search her, or so they said. And while she was in the back seat, managed to both free her hands and get a gun that they missed on her body. Like, and stop for a second and think, how bad do you have to be at policing to not notice if somebody has got a gun on them after you've arrested them? So the story is that she got loose and opened fire from the back seat, and then the cops turned around and shot her dead. And maybe that's what happened. But it took years to get the police video from the police. Like they never, they, they, I think it took 3 years before the city released that video to the public. And that speaks to a big cultural problem. And there is one, as much as I can praise at times APD, there's a cultural problem around video. The Atlanta Police Department is under a federal consent order that requires them to not screw with people who have cell phones and are taking video. And they violate that all the time. Hold that thought. So one of the things here, like, you might find this not surprising if you've been watching stuff. So there are competing political organizations that are seeking attention in this moment. Some of them are fairly mainstream, like the NAACP. But like a Black Israelite group has had a PA preaching all sorts of hateful garbage, like for hours and hours and hours, and they only just packed up. Like, and they were here. The folks, the woman who is speaking there now, like, and I want to speak with her more later. Her name is Sophia, and she was just talking about we are all gods and goddesses, which indicates to me that she may be a Nation of Gods and Earth's supporter, which is a religious movement that gets referenced a lot in rap. Erykah Badu, for example. There are straight up socialists. The Revolutionary Communist Party is out here. The Party for Socialism and Liberation is here. Like, there are a couple of political candidates, like I mentioned, but for the most part, like it's not like people are out here because there is some single unified political force that is saying this is where we need to be and what we need to do. It's a grab bag. It's disorganized, and that might be the reason why reform efforts died on the vine the way they did.
So,
Okay. I hate to do. All right. So, where are we now? Because I'm actually out of juice.
All right. Well, we're about to wrap it up. Real quick. Thank you, everybody. We actually just made over $200 to donate to your organization within the last 10 minutes. And can you remind people who've tipped us where that money's going again?
So anything that shows up today is going to go right back to the pre-arrest diversion initiative in the city of Atlanta.
Okay.
This is an organization, and there's funding, but they need extra stuff, and that's actually something we need to talk about. It prevents police officers from arresting people who are doing low-level quality of life crimes and diverts it into a social services response. It's exactly what everybody's talking about. It's just poorly funded, and poorly supported.
I got you. All right. Well, is there anything parting thought, real quick, that you want to leave with our viewers before we wrap everything up?
I'll say this: like, people are pissed off enough that if we can harness this and lay it on the line for somebody who's elected to public office, like, serve these people, do the things that the folks who are willing to stand in the streets right now demand, or you lose your job. Like, if we can harness this energy to that end, we're actually going to save some lives and maybe change the world. Like, we're in a moment of possibility here, and I'm actually fairly optimistic about that. But my God, is it going to take a lot of hard work.
Well, we appreciate you putting in the work, George. All of our readers are telling you to stay safe. We are going to wrap the stream up now. We will see you again on Wednesday, hopefully. We're going to stream Wednesday at 6 p.m. We're going to have George and Hans and some other guests to be determined. If you're out there hitting the streets this evening, be safe, everybody. Get home safe. And, George is right. It's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to take all of us working together to make real change. But hang in there. Hang in there, everybody. Okay, George, I'm going to let you go. Stay safe. Check in later. Let me know you're okay, okay?
I will.
Thank you.
Well,
Peace and love.